Hello and welcome to another episode of India Risk Report, and in this episode we are looking at safety and security in the schools across the countries, and have we really learnt our lessons after all the media coverage of certain embarrassing situations over the last year or two, particularly in the light of the fact that the existing infrastructures of many schools have been audited, need to be audited, and under pressure from the public, parents and the media, the school authorities have begun to put in place certain measures that would make life for the students more safe and secure. However, big questions still remain as to what needs to be done and if the right things are being done. And we have with us an eminent panel today, which is inclusive of Professor J.S. Rajput, who is an educationist and a former director of the NCERT and a Padma Shri recipient. Welcome on the show, sir. And we have the very highly decorated Dr. Vikram Singh, an educationist and a former DGP of Police of Uttar Pradesh, and now heading a fast, recognized, top-of-the-line private university in Noida. And we have Mr. Kunal Bhogal with us, who's Vice President of Security and Design at IRIS. So all of them are collectively going to give us their view on really where we need to go. Professor Rajput, I'll start with you, sir. What improvements have really taken place over the last year or two, and what improvements have come because of public pressure, media pressure, or these improvements were part of the ongoing process of improving the educational safety environment for the average student who goes there?
You see, most of the discussions and most of the initiatives have been confined only to public schools. At the state level, not much has happened. Things remain as they were, and this is the area which concerns people like me most. After all, a school requires a lot of action for security only at the school level. There is no dearth of guidelines, there is no dearth of circulars, they are issued regularly and nobody cares about them. But what you need is, you need a full contingent of teachers in schools, you need guidance counselors in schools, you need interaction with the parents at regular intervals, you need to talk to parents, and this is very essential. You use your technology. For example, at the entrance you can use it, other places you use it, but within the classroom, it is the teacher which brings in, inspires, who brings in the interaction and confidence in the child. That confidence is missing. The teacher-taught relationship, the teacher-taught ratio are directly connected to security, the angle that I would like to present here. Unless until you establish a rapport between the three, the teachers, the taught and the parents, those efforts are not taking place at adequate measures. There are no orientations for parents, there are no orientations for teachers. And the worst thing that is, why should we not have given importance to leadership in these schools? Principal, headmaster, that makes all the difference. I would like to mention that Gunnar Myrdal in his book Asian Drama in around 1970, 68, 70, he said, teacher education institutions are the power plants for developing countries.
No, that's
in fact, the point. You have to bring the teachers' teacher education is about security. Talk in the teacher training institutions. Talk in their orientation programs. When you train them and you reorient them, talk about security.
Well, that's very well put, sir. That's very well put. In fact, they say the future of India is being shaped in its classrooms.
In the classrooms.
And Dr. Singh, sir, for me, there are two very clear elements of educational institutions. One is the physical security of the mortars, bricks and the infrastructure, which is through technology, through boundary walls, through various CCTVs and various measures. And the other is the emotional security of the student community. You are well versed in both. Having been a police officer, you have an eye for those details. Having now been in the position of heading a university, you again have an eye on understanding the student-teacher relationship. Could you quantify?
Obviously, Mr. Raza, I thought I'll be the only one to start with a note of pessimism. But the statements given by Professor Rajput, if he is feeling so, the logic and the statements given by him are most disturbing and disconcerting. I would say we have made a beginning, but we have miles to go before we sleep. The physical security is a very small aspect of security. The largest security is when I provide emotional security to those in my care. And to that extent, the stakeholders are, as Professor Rajput has very clearly mentioned, the teachers, the taught, and the college administration. And the tripod, this tripod has to be reinforced at all levels. The parents feel that they have paid the fees, put the children in the college, and the job is over. No, you get as much in an orphanage. If you put your child in a college or a school, the first step is there. The teachers, there's always a best way of doing everything, not the shoddy way. I would rather the teachers focus all their energies and time on the students in the charge and not concentrate on coaching institutions. The checks and balances and the inspections which have long been given away for the last 50 years, you may recall that the inspections by the Deputy Inspector of Schools was some kind of a visit by General Dyer. That was some kind of an aura associated. The inspections, the annual administrative report, the flaws, do we have any of them? I'm sorry, we don't have any of them. So, taking Dr. J.S. Rajput's pessimism still further, that the checks and balances and the circulars are there, what we need is a faithful implementation which is lacking today.
Very well put, sir. But Kunal, I think that's where we come in. The checks and balances are lacking. But are audits being carried out effectively? If the audits are being carried out effectively, are they being communicated beyond the boundary walls of the school to all people concerned, such as stakeholders that are the parents themselves? Is it being made public in the media also? Therefore, because somebody who orders an audit says कि नहीं इसको ज़रा confidential रखना, but unless there is more noise and more public debate on the subject, that an audit has found that a school, for instance, still has a large number of cases, not just of students ragging, but the harassment of teachers by students also in many institutions. So, where are those audit reports? Where are we as far as the audits are concerned? I mean, 2 years or more is a fair amount of time for getting our act together.
No, you rightfully said, though there are guidelines to conduct these audits, but we can't just solely rely on guidelines. If you actually go down to grassroots, every school is different, their environments are different, right? So, an assessment has to be done that what will this audit actually encompass? What are the different parameters of this audit which is very specific to that school? Ground realities are very different, like the way you were saying that there is currently no platform to integrate people who are outside the school as well as inside, and not just the children, right? So, we actually focus more on getting this act together wherein people are integrated and there is the right amount of information sent out in the public domain as well as the authority at the right time. So, so yes, currently the relationship between an auditor and the school is sacrosanct, and this information is very proprietary to the school itself. But I think it has all got to do with the law of the land, wherein the school should communicate where do they stand in terms of their audit points, in terms of the findings from a third party, and how should they improve themselves better.
Okay, Professor Rajput, I go back to an original point that you made, which was very important. It is the training of leadership. The leadership within schools, the leadership within the classes, and how that training could also include an awareness of addressing the security concerns within their setup.
You see, there is a very small point which has a very huge implication. There are 10 lakh vacancies of teachers. More than 80% principals are not regular in the government schools, and same is applies even to Delhi schools. Now, we have ignored the whole thing. If you ignore the system as a whole, then obviously you cannot just improve the security aspect in isolation. That is to be considered. It has to be a totality, and that totality we have not attended to. This is best explained by the fact the Right to Education Act. It was to be implemented fully within 3 years by 2013. Now, 90% of the government schools should stand derecognized because they do not fulfill the norms prescribed by the government, accepted by state governments. Now, this dichotomy, neglect of education system, neglect of schools, neglect of leadership. I would insist that a school would be secure if the principal is fully trained, committed and competent. That is what we have been trying in many places, but you can't do it. Central government alone cannot do it. States have to take this responsibility. Every school is a sacrosanct place. The audit report is not something which should not be made public to everybody. Every parent should know about it. Everybody should know about it. These things we are ignoring, and that is why the total environment in the school is not conducive for the child to feel free, to feel good, to feel joyful and learn. Now, if this is not there, things will definitely deteriorate on many aspects.
Dr. Singh, sir.
Dr. Singh has made out a very good point. Now, if there are teachers under stress and strain, if he has to work for 2 or 3 others also, and then this coaching system, the tuition system, all this is impacting the total environment, and therefore it has to be viewed in totality.
Dr. Singh, Professor Rajput obviously knows what all needs to be addressed and needs to be talked about, but do you feel that we are faced as a developing nation with the devil's alternative, that either have complete quality control or just impart any form of education, at least get on with the ability of the person to read and write, and therefore these shortcuts are coming into play?
Certainly, Mr. Raza, please let us go back to the words of wisdom of Professor Rajput, what he has said and what he has left unsaid. Everything is perfectly doable. It's difficult, but certainly not impossible. There has to be a beginning someday. Let us at least make a beginning today, an honest beginning today. It is not rocket science if we were to have good pedagogy, good training, good classroom, smart classrooms wherever it's possible. What happened in Gurgaon, in one of the primary and the best schools, supposedly the best schools of India, is the classic case of what not to do. It is not that we did not invest, it is perhaps we did not apply our minds, our attention and our thought. It is not rocket science to have a perimeter security. It is not rocket science to prevent this establishment of a liquor vent dot next to the school. It is also not rocket science to say that you should be hobnobbing with the antisocial elements and not to have CCTVs where you need to have them, and then to hobnob with antisocial elements and to have a nexus with the local police. What you need to do is important, but what you do not need to do, perhaps start doing that.
Is equally important. Thank you very much. I think we are really being able to cover a lot of ground on this very sensitive subject, but we'll be back after break to look at the importance of technology, the importance of certain interactive measures, and the importance of looking at examples elsewhere in the world, and can they be implemented in India. But that after break. Welcome back. We are continuing to look at safety and security in the schools of India and how the current challenges can be addressed. And we have a very distinguished panel with us. Professor Rajput, back to you again, sir. It is said that technology across the world in various areas, not just education, helps overcome many human shortcomings. Do you subscribe to that, or do you feel that this is better said and implemented in the big cities of India, and in the small towns of India where you can barely produce a teacher, technology to bahut dur ki cheez hai?
I am of the opinion that, well, change is everywhere, everybody knows. And Thomas Friedman wrote recently, this is the age of accelerations. That's fine, but not every change brings progress. This is to be kept in mind when you are going to use technology. Technology can be used, it should be used at certain places. It cannot be used in certain places. For example, I have read in newspapers that Delhi government is going to put a CCTV in the classroom, and it will be connected to the parents also. Now, if a child just picks the pencil of his friend and puts it somewhere here, he will like to enjoy it. But Pitaji shaam ko kahenge nothing doing, shararat nahi honi chahiye. So this will be a misuse in my use it, but apply your mind. First of all, you have to provide the basic necessities in schools, every school. And unless until you do that, technology could also be misutilized. A lot of work is required to be done to train teachers how to interact with children and parents so that technology is not misused. A lot of misuse is taking place. Human element shall always remain prominent, at least for the next 40, 50 years, as I can envision, whatever technology comes. And many places technology will have to be discarded. and technology is not necessarily available. All we talk of internet, we talk of computers. Go to the schools in rural areas and see what is happening, what is the fate of computers. So this is a very tricky area. One has to be very, very sensitive in thinking about it. A lot of policy initiatives are necessary, but misutilization has to be checked. This is my
very, very well brought out. So actually we need to do this very tough balancing act, which is often the hardest part to implement. Dr. Singh sir, from a law enforcement perspective, there is a need to strengthen bylaws and codification norms for educational institutions. Is there a need really? If so, can we make them into a standard and preventive checks and steps that become measures which need to be implemented across the board? Or how do we do the balancing act between the haves and the have-nots? The aviation industry finds it very easy to have across the board tough checks, but that is the aviation industry. The education industry has huge variations between the haves and have-nots. How do you balance it?
I'm happy you've raised this point, Mr. Raza. Necessity is the mother of invention. I would rather not. There are so many institutions, there are so many organizations that have an overview in the schools, but primarily 99% of our problems are covered by the Juvenile Justice Act, the POCSO, the Indian Penal Code, the CRPC and the NDPS Act. Give them a checklist of just 5 sections each, and in 20 sections in an A4 sheet, you will have given 99% of the problems that a school and a child can possibly encounter. And that extent, I think if you ask any principal what is the meaning of NDPS and what is a psychotropic substance, the principal would not know. Every tailor outside the school, 50% of them are peddling drugs. What is molestation? They would not know the difference between 294 and 154 of the Indian Penal Code. Tell them what is legal and what is illegal, what is a good touch, what is a bad touch. And if you have done that, I think you will have started on a good note.
So, as a police officer, would you disagree with the idea that the police needs to assist the school administration? For example, it is not just the boundary walls, but beyond the boundary walls, there is perimeter 1, perimeter 2, perimeter 3. So that area needs to be sanitized of all these unworthy elements who influence the mind of the child and their activities. Can the local police help with that?
What a fantastic question. I remember when I joined service, the instructions used to be in Urdu and said कि बदमाशान की मौजूदगी institutions के आसपास इर्द-गिर्द नहीं होनी चाहिए. The word बदमाशान, it was the job of the SO to contact the principal once in 24 hours. Ask any SO in the NCR if he has ever seen what a school looks like and what a principal looks like. What to talk of the Badmashan, it was the job of the SO and the SP when he visited the district or the DIG to meet the principals and tell them any problems of eve teasing, any problems of bullies and local gundas. I think the police need also to put their act together.
Very, very, very well put, sir. Okay, Kunal, now you've heard both the experts. Now there are two things that come out. Professor Rajput's view is about technology can only do that much. The human element will still remain preeminent as far as education, at least education in India is concerned. I mean, regardless of our obsession with computers and laptops and whatever else, but in terms of security and safety, the human element, there's nothing like alert eyes and ears. But so what is your take on technology versus the human factor?
So I'll take from what sir was suggesting about upgrading the human potential, right? First, we need to know what is our problem. How would we get to know what is our problem? So what we have done, and we've been doing a lot of audits for various types of schools, various scales of schools, and not just for schools, but even child safety creche. You know, even that's a very booming business now, right? And there are very loose guidelines around that. So we've gotten all of that knowledge, and working with professionals, working with think tanks, we got ourselves an app which is accessible by all. It's available on the Google Play Store. It's available on Apple, and by which you can actually make a basic assessment of what could be a possible problem statement for your school. Okay. Once you know where are you standing on various parameters, I think the first things that we ought to do is, when we are implementing technology, the technology for at least school children shouldn't be in the eye, shouldn't be very intruding. So one is balancing out where does surveillance end and where does privacy start? One is that. The second other aspects which are probably not just in the school but just at the junction wherein the school boundary ends and the external boundary starts is the handover of children, right? A lot has to be done there. People have to be upgraded with the knowledge that what exactly does handover happen, how does it happen, what does it entail. Last but not the least is it all goes back to the kind of skills that we are upgrading within the school environment. The teachers, the management, they all need to be given they all need to be given an updated crash course on what latest technology can do and where do you stop using technology and start using your human capacity. I think that's my take on that.
Okay. Yeah. Professor Rajput, quick question. Kunal's company IRIS received a 400% increase in queries on what needs to be done regarding safety and security, but it translated only into 1.5% of business. So everyone wants to know, but when they think they've picked up enough gyan, they don't want to invest in it. So is there something that can be done to make people realize it's important to invest in safety and security as much as it is important to invest in a good office and a good car for the principal?
Those institutions which have the resources must be made to do it. This is what Dr. Singh would say. They must be made to do it. Others, and they are in majority, who do not have the resources, they need to be supported, they need to be trusted. Their children need to be provided an environment conducive within the boundary wall and outside the boundary wall. And they have to have a boundary wall also. That also is essential. What has been pointed out, just outside the school, you have all types of wrong things and children learn from them. Those schools which sell books and dresses inside the school, they are also inculcating incorrect values. All these things make a difference. A school has to be seen in totality, and I am repeating it. And therefore, use technology, you must use technology within the limitations, within the fully analyzed conditions, but those who have the resources, and there are a good number of private schools which are somehow called public schools, they should be made to do it strictly by a rule of law, and others should be supported in creating an environment and also the infrastructure support wherever they need it.
So there are lots of good points, and we have to finish, sir. We are completely short of time. Completely short of time, sir. I'm sorry, but I think you've made your point. Thank you very much for being with us on the show, but quite clearly school safety and security and that of the children is still an issue of great concern. Steps have been taken, but it appears much more can be done. Until that is done, we all need to be alert. Thank you very much for being with us on the show. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, goodbye.